Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I want to thank the organizing committee for the invitation to be here with you today. I'm very honored to be a part of your meeting. And as we just get up and going here, I want to quickly recognize my collaborators on this current project we're talking about. Some work that we published not too long ago with today's presentation. So, first off, we've had some previous speakers who kind of set the stage nicely for what I'm going to be talking about, the direction I'm going in. And when we look at soil, when we look at climate, we know the soil and climate are part of a system, right? Just a couple of examples up here of that system. Both soils and climate are part of the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, and these cycles include greenhouse gases within them. And so how soils are functioning, how we're managing soils, these things create an impact on the climate here on our planet. We also know that soils are the largest terrestrial carbon pool. Talk about active carbon within the terrestrial system. Soils far outweigh any other part of that pool. So we have this soils climate link. That's really important. We also know that human management has a large impact on our soil system. Again, just one brief, straightforward example here. Tillage was talked about earlier. Some examples were shown of carbon loss due to tillage. But we know that when we start off with a native system, we start to till that system, we lose organic carbon from the system. We can do things to change that up. We can do things like implement a no-till system, for example. And at least under the right circumstances, that no-till system can recover or add some of that carbon back to our system, to our soil system. But we have this nexus taking place in our world between soils, climate, and people. The soils affect climate, climate affects soils, people affect soils, and people affect climate. We've got this connection. So what I really want to talk about today, in terms of the focus of my talk, is really how we can use lessons learned from past societies to try to address some of the challenges that we face today. The archaeological record is a very powerful tool at our disposal to address these kinds of things. Now, there are both limitations and advantages to the archaeological record. You see we have some limitations listed up here, but we have advantages listed up here. I'm going to focus on the advantages just for the moment. We'll acknowledge that the limitations exist. But the archaeological record gives us a chance to extend back into greater time periods and look at things that go beyond modern science, or that go beyond historical records, and to look at how past societies have both implemented their management of soils, their cultural systems, and see how they've responded to changes in climate or to other such things. So there are things we're facing today that have been faced in the past. Is the big takeaway from this, and we can utilize that to help us understand what we might be going forward in the future. Now, 20 minutes isn't a whole lot of time to go over this topic. So what I chose to do is just pick two kind of case studies, two where we had cultural failures, and two where we've had long-term cultural successes. There are many other cultures that could have been selected as case studies in here, so certainly as we go through today, I'm sure you'll probably think of societies that I will not talk about, but in the interest of time, we're keeping it fairly brief. Looking at cultural failures, the first one about is the Norse in Greenland. So the Vikings settled Greenland, starting back about in the 900s CE. And when they first arrived in Greenland, those settlements did really well. They brought in a very typical Norwegian form of pastoral management, had a society very much based on the raising of animals. But in about 1300 CE, the little ice age started. Temperatures got much cooler, summers got shorter, winters got longer. And the Norwegian society that had been established in Greenland within 100 years collapsed, no longer able to sustain themselves. There is also evidence in the record there. We've had people do work on the soils around these settlements, and there is evidence that pastoral agriculture that the Scandinavians brought in was leading to soil degradation at these sites due to overgrazing, trampling, those kinds of things. And there is evidence in the archaeological record that as the climate started to change and as the society started to struggle, that there was a cultural resistance to making changes that might have allowed them to adapt to those changes in the climate. One of the things that really stands out in that regards is that there were Inuit communities there in Greenland also. And a lot of people say, oh, the Little Ice Age came and those Norse settlements failed because Greenland suddenly was not habitable for humans. Well, there's a whole group of humans that stayed there and did just fine in the Little Ice Age. The Inuits, they thrived. They made it through. So while climate has been oftentimes tagged as the problem, there has to be more to it. It's a more complex issue. And so lessons that we can learn from Greenland include climate certainly does make a difference, but climate's not the only variable. And if we have cultural resistance to making changes that would allow you to exist in this new setting, this new climate, that's also going to make a difference in whether or not we're able to survive that. Easter Island in the Pacific Ocean, another classic example of a society that experienced collapse. With Easter Island, soil degradation is the issue that is most frequently looked at, and certainly we did see soil degradation taking place. Easter Island was first settled about 1100 CE, and there was an overexploitation of resources, degradation of the environment. We'll see where the palm forests that were native to Easter Island were logged out. We can see where there was extensive soil erosion that took place, a loss of fertility in those soils. But again, there probably was more to it than just that. You look at it again about 200 years after Easter Island was settled, we hit the Little Ice Age again. And we probably saw some influence from that. The big takeaway from this is that we definitely have situations where when we live in a great environment, there can be a final trigger that pushes us over the edge in terms of a society that is seeking to survive in that changing environment. So those are just two quick examples of societies that we've seen failures in. The good news is we also have several examples, again I'll stick to two for today's talk. We have several examples of societies that had a long-term sustainable existence. The first one I'll look at is what referred to oftentimes as the marsh dwellers. This is a group of people that lived in lower reaches of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, so modern-day Iraq. And if you look at the map over there, there's the pre-1970 map. All that area is shown in green and blue and yellow. That's the area of the marshes that these people lived in. They practiced a low impact agricultural lifestyle. They built up islands within the marshes where they put their houses. You can see the picture up there that shows some of the houses they would build, people out in the marshes doing their work. And on these islands and surrounding areas, they would raise dates, various vegetables, water buffalo, things of this nature. The tests in these areas show that we have high concentrations of nitrogen and phosphorus in the islands, built up from many, many years, or actually centuries, of organic matter additions to these systems. But in the 1970s and 1980s, there was a big series of dam construction that took place in Iraq, also a marsh drainage program. And so by the 2000s, the map on the lower right-hand side of the screen there, where it says 2000s, you can see that little area of green that's left in there, and the big areas of white, that was all the marshes that remained. And so that led to a good, after 5,000 years of practicing this lifestyle sustainably, that led to a collapse of this particular way of life. We have some takeaways here. First off, the first big takeaway is there are ways to live long-term, sustainably within a given environment. Okay, as humans, we can do that. But also, if we have a substantial change in the system, that can lead to a collapse of that sustainable lifestyle. In other words, sustainable if the system is not there to support that sustainability. The second sustainable example I'll use comes from the Andes Mountains of South America. We have terraces here in the Andes that have been cultivated for more than 1,500 years. They would use, I should say, green manure and ash. The South American societies actually did not extensively utilize animal husbandry, but green manure and ash were incorporated into the terrace soils to build fertility. You see that these are very steep mountainsides that they're living on, but the creation of terraces put in these flat surfaces on which the agriculture would take place. We would restrict soil loss, trap water on the terraces, those flat surfaces, and so, and actually they would also, on these terraces, they would move up and down the mountain. You see they're going to abandon it. There's fluctuations. They actually would move up and down the mountain as climates fluctuated. And so, as you're aware, a mountain creates its own kind of microclimates. And so, as climate changed, they would move up the mountain or down the mountain and take advantage of areas within that mountain, within the altitude of that mountain, that the agriculture was possible with these terrace systems. In fact, as you look at the picture right here, right now, you'll see that the lower part of the picture, the terraces look really sharp and clean. Go up above, it's a little bit less than halfway up the mountainside that shows up in the picture. The mountains look so clean. That's because those terraces up above, at the point in time the picture was taken, have been abandoned. They're using the lower sections of the terraces to practice their agricultural practices. So a good lesson to be learned here from this one. We may have a given practice that's sustainable under some climates, but the same practice is not as sustainable as the climate changes. So what can we learn from our look at past societies here? We know, just to summarize things up, it is possible to develop agricultural systems that are sustainable, and we can have those systems run for long periods of time. That's not an impossible thing to achieve. People have done it before. Despite that, we have plenty of examples of civilizations that have failed, at least in part due to environmental changes, due to degradation of the soil system or other aspects of the environment. We do know that humans, we are resilient creatures, and despite change, the agricultural record tells us it's rarely one single thing, one single change that leads to a societal collapse. It's usually going to be a combination of things, and that combination eventually becomes unsustainable for the society. Now, what that does tell us, however, if we look at our current world, right now we live in a world where there is widespread environmental degradation. I think it might have been Eduardo give me his last name out now, but put up looking at the different types of degradation. You had water erosion, soil, water erosion, wind erosion, physical degradation, chemical degradation, etc. There's really different kinds of degradation that are out there. We have a lot of degradation that's taking place, right, in our world. And we know that we are undergoing climate change, as other speakers have also already referenced in today's talks. And so that is a very concerning combination. We look back at our past societies and what led to their failures. That combination is very concerning for us. So we need to find ways to minimize that environmental degradation, and we're going to cope with climate change that we know is here, that we're going to have to deal with. That is that's what I have to say for today, so thank you very much.